just past 11 o'clock and we're still waiting for a couple of attendees, so I'm just going to give it another minute and then we'll make a start. Thank you for your patience. Well, I think that's everybody, so we'll make a start. Thank you all for registering. It's great to see a mix of representation today across information managers. I can see a couple of civil engineers, some BIM coordinators, Sorry, I'm having... Great, okay. So I'll make another start. So again, thanks for all registering. It's great to see a real mix of representation today, and it's great to see some of my NBS colleagues as well in the audience today, so that's great. So before I start, just a little bit of information about myself and why I'm presenting the BIM Toolkit to you today. My name's Sarah Gray and I've been the Product Manager for NBS BIM Toolkit since its release in April earlier this year. I've also been a member of the NBS team for over 13 years now, working with our range of specification and construction project resources and all their users from all sectors of the industry across public and private sector. So today I want to touch briefly on the reasons behind the BIM Toolkit, but my focus in this session will be how the toolkit can typically be used by clients and the design team on projects. I did do a similar session for construction product manufacturers last month in September, and this is available to view on our NBS YouTube channel. So a bit more about today's session. So I'm going to give a bit of an introduction, which I've already done. I'm going to go through the NBS Toolkit in use, and then I'm going to give some guidance on what you can do next to start benefiting from the toolkit, and lastly we'll have some time for questions and answers. I will try and reply to questions during the session. I have a colleague here who's observing the questions for me, but any that we don't get a chance to respond to during the session we'll try and cover at the end, but any that we don't actually get a chance to respond to at all, we will make sure that we send a follow-up email with responses after the session. Before I progress any further, could I just get a couple of you to post whether you can hear me or not, just before I go too far into the presentation? Fantastic, thanks for that. Okay, so when I'm demonstrating the toolkit in use, my aim is to try and paint as clear a picture as possible of the who and how and when the toolkit might be used and the value of the BIM toolkit to yourselves as clients and designers. So first, as I said, the presentation is really going to focus on the toolkit in use, but let's spend 30 seconds or so reminding ourselves of the context of the BIM toolkit in relation to Level 2 BIM, government strategy, and the various BIM enabling standards that have been released. So the Level 2 BIM package, as you see here, which hopefully you're all aware of, was intended to provide the industry with the frameworks and standards they needed to achieve Level 2 BIM. With the April 2016 deadline for use of Level 2 BIM on centrally procured projects, but there were two missing pieces of the Level 2 BIM jigsaw which were identified, and these were Unified Classification System and a Digital Plan of Work. And so the Innovate UK funded project took place, which saw NBS work with a number of industry representatives to release the NBS BIM Toolkit in April this year. So as you see, we had quite a strong core team there, with steering team representing various institutes across the industry. And in terms of the BIM toolkit, in terms of its intended uses and benefits, I've captured these over the next 5 slides. I'm just going to take you through these, not in detail, but I'm just going to show these up on screen so that you can familiarise yourself with them, but I'm going to try and touch on these actually within the demonstration itself. So the BIM toolkit delivers the unified classification. It gives you the ability to assign and manage tasks. It gives you a library of object definitions, a tool to define what you want, a tool to describe what you intend to deliver, a tool to check that supply meets demand. This verification part of the toolkit is in research prototype stage, which you will see if you actually have a look on the toolkit site itself. So I won't be touching on that too much today, but if anybody is interested in more detail on that, please send me an email and we can get you involved in our beta testing program. So it's a tool, as you can see here, that can generate an outline specification, a tool that supports open access and Open BIM standards. It's a place where digital construction products information can be found and used. And it's also an industry recognised resource. Last month it was featured and referenced in TRADA's National Structural Timber Specification, which was just published. Recently NBS were on the revision committee for the recently published BS 8536, and the published revised document makes specific reference to the toolkit, includes hyperlinks. And the toolkit was also featured in the list of changes that recently went through on BS 1192. But fundamentally, the value of the toolkit is in the technical content it provides and the software functionality, and about supporting this concept of information delivery through the various stages of the plan of work. And so ultimately, the client is procuring digital information to help with future management and maintenance of the asset, in addition to procuring the physical asset itself. So that's enough for the introduction. Now we'll get across to the BIM toolkit itself. So as stated in the BIM Task Group newsletter in July, the primary objective of the toolkit was for construction professionals to be able to define what data should be delivered, by whom and by when. And you can see that message captured really strongly there as soon as you come onto the site. The BIM Task Group also described as a keystone to enabling practical implementation of UK Level 2 BIM. Whilst this Level 2 BIM project is a really strong message, in its ability to deliver information consistency and clarity of responsibilities across the entire project team, the toolkit does offer value to BIM and non-BIM projects alike across both public and private sector. Since its first release in April, it's received over 19,000 visitors from over 140 countries. Over 3,000 projects are being created as people come in and try and see the benefits to themselves of using the toolkit. And at the end of last month, the toolkit reached the end of the beta phase across the project areas of the site, marking its true ready for use status. In terms of the benefits, as I scroll down the page, I'll try and make this as nice an experience as possible, so I'll try and scroll as slowly as I possibly can. The benefits across the different audiences are captured here on the screen in terms of benefits across the clients, the design team and product manufacturers alike, and I'll try to refer to these as much as I can during the toolkit run through. As I mentioned earlier, the session does focus on the clients and design side, so anyone interested in viewing a similar session for the construction product manufacturers can do so on our NBS YouTube channel. So let's take a look at some of the values that the toolkit can deliver. Before we even start creating projects, there's a wealth of information that you can benefit from in terms of a series of classification tables and a vast object definitions library for you to browse and use. So let's take a look at the classification information first. So as we mentioned earlier, the two missing pieces of the jigsaw, one of which was a unified classification system. The UK needed a unified classification system which was built for BIM and based on the ISO 12006 Part 2 international framework, which covers infrastructure as well as buildings. The Uniclass 2015 tables supports you with the information structures you need across all stages of a project, from a very early stage to later. So if I just take you further down to where the tables are actually located. So this is a great article from our Head of Classification. If you haven't already had a chance to read it, please do so. It'll really help explain the context of Uniclass 2015. So as I said, the tables are actually available to download here. And the tables support you with the information structures you need across the stage of a project, from the early stage where you're talking about possibly facilities, through to spaces such as washrooms, to systems such as ceilings within that washroom, to products such as ceiling tiles, etc. The NBS BIM Toolkit allows users to explore the Uniclass 2015 content via this route here. You can browse it, filter it, search it, or you can actually download the tables, which will download in Excel format. For the purpose of today's session, and bearing in mind that we have 30 minutes, I'm not going to go into more detail on classification, but again, if you've got any questions, please send them through. In terms of the definitions resource available within the BIM Toolkit, so apologies for quickly scrolling back to the top. We've got a great definitions resource here. So again, there's some expert articles, should you wish to read them, which help contextualize levels of definition and what that means. In terms of how this can benefit across the project, the requirements for information, both in terms of what the client requests or what the designer or the supply chain provides, will grow as the project develops. So if I just show you an example here within the BIM Toolkit. If we just look at the ceilings information here in terms of the object definition information that's available, you'll see that it provides both graphical in terms of LOD or level of detail and non-graphical information. And what it does is it provides the different levels of details. So here I'm on the graphical information, the different level of details, 2, level of detail 2, level of detail 3, level of detail 4, and so on. That might relate to the different stages of the project as it develops. So at an early stage, you're talking about quite generic objects, and therefore these are captured via different resources that you can see on screen here through the National BIM Library. And as it progresses, and you're putting more detail against those, so the detail of the object and the information we provide with you in terms of useful resources, so that develops, and we have manufacturer-specific objects at a later stage. So again, I'm just showing here a resource that could be used even before you've started creating a project. And the same information is available for level of information, so the non-graphical information. Again, as the project progresses, the level of detail you are required to provide or that the client may request would increase in detail as the stages progress. And so here, at an early stage, we provide access to manufacturers' catalogues, which might suit the level of information required at this stage. And as the project progresses and you're required to provide more detail, so we provide extra resources in terms of written product specification information from our NBS Plus resource, which you can click on and use within your respective specification and CAD models. In terms of searching this level of definitions library, it's got a really great search function. So if I just search here for a LV system, which is often how people might search for it, and what you can see there is that it's returned information relating to low voltage distribution systems, which is as I would expect. So the BIM Toolkit is supported by a library of synonyms in the background, which means that if you type in LV system, as I just did in this example, the BIM Toolkit will return the relevant results. And there are many other examples of these synonyms in action across the toolkit. So all of what we've looked at here is information that is fully maintained, it's free to use, and it's usable even before you start getting into project world within the BIM Toolkit. So let's move across now to project use. What I'd like to show you is the BIM Toolkit as it would be used on a project, the role of the client, and the benefits to the design team and the supply chain involved. And the example I'm going to use, if you bear with me, is a new restaurant build. But before I do that, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to familiarise you with different parts of the screen and what things mean before I start jumping into the actual project use itself. So all projects have the concept of stages, as you can see here, which are similar to the plan of work stages but were adjusted to reflect the project stages that could be used, whether it was a building project, a rail project or a road project, bearing in mind that the toolkit was developed primarily to support government on their projects, so that on the government as a client, and obviously the range of projects which the government have in their asset portfolio. So each stage has details about it, which you enter as you progress through the stages, and I'll show this in action. Each project has the concept of roles, so there are different roles and disciplines involved at the different stages in the project. And as the project progresses and you start putting names to faces, if you like, if you start allocating named organisations against these roles, so the concept of participants comes into play. And again, I'll show you that in action. And there's the concept of tasks and deliverables. Tasks and deliverables are really just about expressing the information needs of the person, of perhaps the client, or at a later stage expressing those information needs of the lead supplier as they're responding to the client's requirements. And not forgetting, of course, the technical support that's available to you in terms of some great frequently asked questions there. And there's also some really useful how-to videos which were new to the end of September release. These are really short, concise how-to videos which introduce the various basic concepts of the BIM toolkit. Okay, so let's get back to my Riverside project. So what I'm doing here, and you can see it keeps defaulting to stage 4, that's because I've marked that as the current stage. So in terms of my project, the Riverside Restaurant project, in my role, so I'm going to play many roles in this demonstration. So currently my role is the client, who I've been a developer of premium restaurants around the UK. So I have done other projects similar to this. So what I've done here is I've actually based this on a previous digital plan of work template from a previous project that I produced through the toolkit. So it means that the project lead that I'm going to employ at these early stages to manage the toolkit process for me and capture my information requirements means that they were able to get off to a really quick start because the tasks and deliverables, where I was able to benefit from the tasks and deliverables from my previous template project. But there are 4 other templates available. You can either base it on an RVA plan of work, you can base it on CIC roles. There's a project that's suitable for geographical infrastructure, and there's a project or a template, sorry, that's suitable for linear infrastructure. And all that does is it brings through the relevant tasks suitable for that project as a template to get you started. So as I said, there's a client on this project. I've employed a representative industry professional to lead my project in these early stages. So it is this project lead, if we look at the roles, at this early stage. So it's this project lead, Hamill Consultants, who would set up the project and manage the toolkit process up to the point where I would we would be handing the project over to a lead designer once they were contracted at a later stage. So at this early stage, working with my project lead, we've captured information about the project. So we've captured information relating to this stage in terms of the stage deadline, the construction start date, the construction end, the construction cost, some BREEAM information, and some stage notes. And there's also options to import images if you want to obviously make it look pretty on that home page of the toolkit. So at this stage, it's a very early stage in the project, and my project lead's probably just capturing tasks at this stage which support delivery of my information requirements, which I probably would have expressed in plain language terms. And what my project lead is, they're turning my plain language questions into tasks which relate to some of the things which I, as the client, would have been expressing an information requirement for. So I've just shown you an example here, and so on and so forth. So as I say, I've set a lot of these up in advance, just mindful of the time that we have. So as we progress, so at stage 0, it's about capturing some really outline information. As we've moved to stage 1, we're starting to put a bit more meat on the bones, a bit more detail to our project. So at this point, we're probably starting to capture deliverables, and at this stage the deliverables will be really top level, so it'll be very much deliverables in terms of spaces, so the kitchens that I want in my restaurant, the enclosed dining areas, and these deliverables can be added really easily. And as you see here, we're talking about public toilets. I can then add that. I can allocate responsibility for that. I can add notes. I can add required dimensions if I wish. And then I can add that deliverable. And what you can see is it's carrying through this uniclass classification. We're not expecting you to be experts in uniclass, but as you can see, it's carried through. It's used information from the spaces table, which is indicated by this SL. At this stage and throughout, there's also down this right-hand panel lots of supporting information to guide you about information relevant to that stage, be it information about the stage itself and what the information requirements would be, the kind of tasks that you've been undertaking at this stage, but also related NBS services that might benefit you. So it is, as I say, it gives handy reminders. And in defining the who, the what, and the when of the project in this way at the stage, it's anticipated that the toolkit will be used in conjunction with, and in some instances, to help populate other tools and documents, including your client brief or your EIR. It can be used in conjunction with your specification and CAD tools, which is where you're going to be actually satisfying the information requirements. It can be used in conjunction with the program of works, where you can be exporting tasks for inclusion within the program of works. It can be used to help populate a BIM execution plan or a task information delivery plan. So there's many uses in terms of the exporting that you can do at various stages in the project. So as the client embarking on this project, there's a real financially tangible value in something like the toolkit that can help me ensure that the information needs for my project are clear and understood by the full project team. And I can express these in really simple terms, so my plain language questions, which can then be captured by my representative industry professional undertaking the role of project lead at this stage, and they're translating them into tasks and deliverables for the project team to tender for and ultimately deliver against. And to say for those doing repeat projects, such as I was, the ability to invest the time once and then reuse this as a template on future projects is hugely time-saving. So the information requirements that I'm capturing in these early stages can form part of my client brief or my AIR. There are export options, which again, for the benefit of the time, I'm not going to show you the actual process, but I can actually export this information at this stage into an Excel spreadsheet. This would then provide me with information relating to the tasks or the deliverables, and it's likely that this information, these deliverables, can be captured within a section of the EIR or the brief. It can either be included within the document itself or as an appendix. So getting back to our BIM Toolkit project, at this stage I've captured my information requirements as a client, and I intend to send that brief out to get lead designers to bid for that work. And at that point, as I say, I'm sending that information out. At that point, the toolkit can be something really useful. So as part of that set of information that you're sending out to the lead designers to tender for, they can actually use the toolkit themselves. So if you share the digital plan of work file, if this information is exported as a digital plan of work file, as we can see here, what I'm now going to show you is me as one of those designers wanting to bid for that work. So I've sent that out, and now I'm playing the role of one of the lead designers interested in this project. I've received that information, and I can now set up a plan of work project for myself, or a digital plan of work project for myself, and I can actually use the project, that digital plan of work project. I can use that to base it on, which means that, apologies, which means that I can benefit from all of those tasks and deliverables, and I can use that, I can edit it, I can add my own level of detail, I can comment on level of information, I can add my own interpretation and expertise and send that back as part of my document set. So between stages 1 and 2, obviously there'll be exchanges of information, there'll be finessing of project proposals, where the toolkit can be used in those ways, so sharing that digital plan of work file, that being used by the lead designer, where ultimately the lead designer will then be appointed. And at stage 3, it's anticipated that that lead designer would undertake the role of project lead within the toolkit. So in a similar way that the previous project lead had shared the digital plan of work file, so they would do so again, and they would do so, and they would share that information with the lead designer, who would now use that and take on the role of the project lead, administrating the project within the toolkit. And at this stage, it becomes a really collaborative tool. The project lead can use this, so the lead designer can use this in project meetings. They can bring it up on screen where they have the different representatives from the team there. They can use that to sort of real-time edit tasks to discuss the level of detail and level of information requirements. They can use that to add comments. So it can become a real sort of capturing of information and discussions, and it's a really, really good working tool. And then once invited to the project, using the participants, so at this stage I'm the lead designer and I'm inviting the other representatives of the team, such as my landscape architect, my services engineer. I'm inviting them to the project at this point in time by adding their information details in here, so you can see I've invited some already. And in a similar way that I've shown that sharing of the digital plan of work file and setting up your own digital plan of work and your own project within the toolkit, so that continues, and the various representatives can do exactly the same and use that as ways to populate their own task information delivery programs, so that can be ultimately coordinated in the end into a master information delivery program by the lead designer. I understand I have shortcutted and round-tripped a lot of those quite detailed processes there. I am mindful of the time, and I'm also mindful of the fact that I have overrun ever so slightly by a couple of minutes. But what I've hopefully shown you is the benefit that the toolkit has in terms of the information it provides, in terms of giving real clarity, assigning tasks to named individuals, being really specific about the level of information and level of detail at the different stages in the project. So now just to summarise, in terms of what to do next, it would be great, we'd love to see you register with the toolkit if you haven't already done so, to browse the 5,700 plus level of detail and level of information, to download and use the classification tables, to create your first project in the BIM toolkit, and to use the support materials available which are online. Thanks again for being part of today's session. I'm now going to try and answer some of the questions. Okay, so have any template projects being created with predefined LOIs which people could reuse? So yes, so that's something which we have in. So there are templates. So there are templates there in terms of the different the CIC and the various other ones which I mentioned before, which are template tasks which are suited to different types of projects. What we've identified is that perhaps a lot of those go into maybe too much detail at the early stages, where the project I used there talked about spaces at an early stage. So in the last few weeks we've identified that as a new information need, and that's a template which we will be trying to set up in the next few weeks. So we'll definitely make you aware when that's available. How do you open this? And the plan of work is exported as a DPOW file. How do you open this file type? So it recognises that it can be opened as a digital plan of work file if you're a user of the toolkit. And in terms of new functionalities planned for the next 2 to 5 years, or where is the toolkit heading? It's just reached the end of its beta status, so at the end of April it came out of funding, and NBS have been running it as a commercial offering or a commercial part of our business since that point. We've delivered a couple of new functions in response to user feedback. We are still getting user feedback, so any user feedback you do give will go into future development program. We do have a team here at NBS who are currently considering what the next release of the BIM toolkit might include, and that will be responding to ongoing feedback that we get. The classification tables are also dynamic. We're getting a lot of feedback on those, and what you'll see is you'll see more of those tables published in the next month or so, with further tables being developed as needs are identified. So that's all we've got time for today. Again, thank you very much for your time. We have other questions that I haven't had time to respond to, but which we will make sure that we send an email afterwards. And I hope to see you registering on Toolkit soon. Thanks again. Bye.